Top story this half hour, the focus on e-cigarettes and vaping. My next guest is suing 8 companies, say they aggressively target children and do not enforce age restrictions. A new University of Texas study shows that teens who are exposed to ads for vaping and e-cigarettes are more likely to purchase the product. 20.8% of high schoolers and 4.9% of middle schoolers reportedly vape. Unregulated advertising could be a factor. Joining us now, North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein. Josh, Attorney General, good to see you. What is the state?
Thanks for having me on.
What is the state doing to stop this?
There is an epidemic of vaping among high schoolers and middle schoolers, and it's not only in North Carolina, it's across the country. In 1 year, from 2017 to 2018, we saw like an 80% increase in reported use just in 1 year. So we don't even know what the 2019 numbers are going to show. It affects the children's lungs, their heart, and it leads to addiction to nicotine that can cause their lives to spiral. There's a young man from High Point here in North Carolina named Luca who told me how in his efforts to try to impress and be cool in 9th grade, he became addicted to Juul, and then his life spiraled out of control. His grades tumbled. He dropped off the cross-country team, Boy Scouts, had to go to long-term treatment for recovery. So the consequences are major, and I'm going to do everything in my power as Attorney General to protect young people from becoming addicted to these very dangerous products.
So you filed suit against 8 different companies related to this. What are you looking for? And just tell us about those lawsuits.
Sure. I sued Juul, which is the 800-pound gorilla of this industry, earlier this year. They're responsible for 75 to 80% of the teen vaping market. But there are all these smaller bit players that are engaged in what I allege to be outrageous behavior. They use flavors like cotton candy, gummy bear, French toast, unicorn, flavors that are known to appeal to children. They design the products in a way to appeal to kids by making them look like USB ports. And then they market these products on the social networking channels like Snapchat and Instagram that teens use. And they use sort of subversive hip marketing, like a picture of one of their products, and it says, "No, Mom, it's a USB port." Now, that advertisement could only be directed to a young person, not to you or me. And finally, they are either wholly failing to do any age verification or doing it in a half-hearted fashion, all of which violates North Carolina law, I allege. And so I've gone to court because I want the North Carolina courts to shut these practices down so we do not lose another generation of teenagers to nicotine addiction.
What about going after the stores that sell these products to teens? Again, rest stops, throughout North Carolina, kiosk, you name it. Because again, it's going to be about more than just targeting the companies that make these e-cigarettes and vaping products.
I agree with you that we need a multifaceted approach to succeeding. There has to be education of young people. We have to go after retailers who are flouting the law. But really, it starts with these corporations because they're the ones who are manufacturing the products. They're the ones who are advertising to young people to try to induce them to use and ultimately become addicted to their products, which I find to be unconscionable, but it's also unlawful here in North Carolina, and I want to shut them down.
I want to turn to the opioid crisis. Purdue Pharma, the maker of OxyContin, and its owners, the Sackler family, are reportedly offering to settle lawsuits against the company for between $10 and $12 billion. The Sackler family and Purdue Pharma are accused of being at least partially responsible for the opioid crisis. Attorney General of North Carolina filed its suit against the company in May 2018. What is the role in this settlement with North Carolina and your reaction to this?
Well, I cannot comment on any settlement or prospective settlement discussions, but what I can tell you is that I believe that Purdue Pharma is majorly responsible for the opioid epidemic that is taking lives across this country. We lose about 5 North Carolinians every day to an opioid overdose. It is devastating individuals, families, communities. And I believe that the drug manufacturers and the drug distributors, who all played a role in fueling this epidemic, must play a role in addressing it.
What additional steps could you, as the Attorney General of North Carolina, take on this note? We covered heavily yesterday the more than $500 million fine against Johnson & Johnson out of Oklahoma, which came in a great deal lower than many people were expecting.
Well, I have gone to court. I've sued Purdue Pharma. I've sued Insys Therapeutics. So litigation is an important role that the Attorney General plays. But I am trying to take a very broad notion of what I can do to fight this epidemic. So we're fighting to reduce the number of people who become addicted through public education. We have a wonderful website called morepowerfulnc.org to empower people. We passed a law called the STOP Act that reduces overprescribing by doctors. I'm advocating that we have more treatment options by expanding Medicaid here in North Carolina. And of course, we're going to go aggressively after drug dealers and drug traffickers who are exploiting people's addiction to make millions of dollars.
I want to raise this issue carefully, though, Attorney General, and this is not what you do for a living, but left out of these conversations about vaping and e-cigarettes and the abuse of opioids is personal responsibility. And at what point, personal responsibility of the parents of these teenagers to make sure that they're not out buying these devices, and also that when people get addicted, that it's somebody else's responsibility, because ultimately it hurts with opioids, the very people who need these drugs to manage catastrophic pain.
Well, for instance, in the STOP Act we passed here in North Carolina, it set a limit on prescribing for acute pain when you break your arm or have your wisdom teeth taken out. It does not address chronic pain, which is real and must be treated. So there are ways to distinguish between people with catastrophic chronic pain and just folks who have a minor medical procedure. But look, teenagers are teenagers. I'm a parent of 3, so I understand. And you cannot expect a parent to know every $40 purchase your child makes at a convenience store. You just can't. And if people think they can, they don't have the first clue of parenting. So kids, their brains are not fully developed. The brain doesn't stop developing until they're 25, so they're not always going to make good decisions, which is why we as parents, why we as a state should protect them from corporations that want to exploit that immaturity and create addiction. It's inexcusable. And I, as Attorney General, will do everything I can to stop that from happening here in my state.
Attorney General, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Please come back.
Thanks, Dagan.
Very soon.
Okay.
Josh Stein.